We'll get started here. First I want to say thank you all for everyone who's attending. Appreciate Matt Clark and Annie Bradford being online with us today as well to talk about teams. It's a topic that I feel like in our market here in the Cedar Rapids, Iowa City area, I've seen more teams, coming on board or people creating teams, I should say. And I think it's become more popular. And, we're going to talk about today about why you should form a team. And next week, why we'll have Alexis Kemp talking about why she left a team. And then she actually formed a team as well. And then talking with Tara Kleberg and Liz Lancer about, why they joined a team and just getting an idea of different perspective that might help agents depending where they're at. So with that, I'll have everyone kind of go through and introduce themselves. So Matt, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself first?
Sure. My name is Matt Clark. I've been a full-time licensed realtor, real estate agent here in the Cedar Rapids market for 8 years. Was a solo agent, like JJ said, for majority of that, but then formed a team as of probably April of this past year. So kind of echo things that JJ said, like it seemed like teams are becoming more popular, maybe more demand, so to speak, for teams. So that was kind of why I was open-minded to that idea. And I had a domestic team previously, the Clark Real Estate team. It was my wife and I. She transitioned to mortgage, and now the Clark Real Estate team is back with Tara Kleberg and Liz Lancer. So that's kind of my background. Annie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, yeah. So I'm Annie Bradford and I work at Keller Williams Legacy Group, and I'm the lead agent for the 319 Home Team, which is a team that I created. I started in real estate just in April of 2022. I had to do the math the other day, and so I haven't been in a long time, but previously was a school administrator at the elementary level for 7 years, and been an educator for 17 years. So had a real good start out of the gate with real estate, and I guess we'll get into the nitty gritty here shortly about why I formed a team.
Yeah, absolutely. Lastly, I'll introduce myself, JJ Johannes. Been involved in real estate. I'm going to be in a couple months here. I'm going to be up to 22 years that I've been involved in real estate. Yeah, I'm dating myself. Been doing real estate as a realtor full time since 2012. So coming up on almost 13 years of doing that. Everything from a solo agent to an independent brokerage, and have kind of more. The team I have is more of a support team versus agents doing transactions. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. And I don't think there's anything else to add on my role of things. So the other thing I want to kind of talk about is for the people who are attending, this is a webinar format. So you can't see anybody else on the webinar. You can see us three talking, and then you can obviously you can see yourself on the webinar. But we do this just so allow people to be anonymous if they want to, listen to this. But then, they may want to stay anonymous throughout the webinar. So you can ask questions. At the bottom of the screen, you're going to see a Q&A button, question button. So you can click that. You can ask a question. When you're typing in your question, there's a checkbox if you want to stay anonymous. That way, when the question comes through, it's an anonymous question. If you don't do that, it's going to say your name. It's either way for us. I'm going to monitor the questions as we're going through this. So if you have any questions when we're kind of having these conversations, definitely drop those in, and we'll answer those as we go through this. So just kind of know that on the question part of things. So with that, I'm going to open up the question on my other screen here. Let's jump right in on the team part of it. So I'll start with you, Amy. What was kind of the main driver in your decision to start a team? Like you started in 2022. I guess when did you form the team, and what was kind of that driver that said, okay, I think I want to form a team?
Yeah, so I started with a different brokerage, and when I started, I was in a class with a group of people that I instantly clicked with, right? We have became really close and still are close, and our idea was to form a team from that group. Unfortunately, the brokerage that I worked for at the time did not allow that. So as I progressed in real estate and became busier and busier, my daughter started studying for her license and joined the same brokerage. And so we decided to form a team at that particular brokerage. They had a agreement, was like a +1, right? You wouldn't have to pay any more into your company dollar if you just had a +1 if that person was a relative, a close relative. So a lot of the +1s at that brokerage are like husband and wife teams, and I don't have a husband, but I have a daughter. So we decided to go ahead and form a team since we were already working so closely together to get her business up and running.
Gotcha. And so when did you form the team, and how long were you solo, and then how after that when you had the team, what was that time frame look like?
Yeah, so solo for about a year.
Okay.
And then when I knew she was starting her to study for her real estate license and had been accepted as part of the brokerage, I went ahead and developed the LLC, which maybe we'll talk a little bit about later, and really did things kind of blindly, unfortunately. Had very little guidance in that area. I knew there was a team at my brokerage that we started with that was super successful, and I just thought that's who I want to be, right? Like I want to be pulling in $60 million a year and be one of the top teams across the country. And so I leaned into that team a little bit. They didn't tell me all their secrets, of course, but they did share some guidance as kind of a mentor type situation. But so it was about a year after I got started in real estate, I decided to go ahead and form a team, mostly out of necessity to place my daughter in a good spot to get started in her career. And she just saw how much I was enjoying it and decided to take the leap.
Yep. And before I move on to Matt, so maybe I guess I should have asked this before. What does your team look like today? So today, the 319 team, like how many team members, who's on it, stuff like that, and maybe a little bit of an idea on production this year, going forward, stuff like that you have.
Sure. So right now I have 2 agents, one being my daughter, Paige Shields, and then another agent, Travis Burke, is on my team. And then I know we have 2 in the queue, sort of, that are working on getting their license that are really interested in joining the team. In order to join the team, they have to go through a vetting process with our entire team because we want to make sure that we can work cohesively together and that we're all providing value to the team. So, and then as far as volume goes, I've stayed pretty consistent in the real estate world since I started just a few short years ago, ending at about 5 million a year. When my daughter joined, we literally shared everything. We didn't do it like a typical team did. We did it more probably like a husband and wife, or maybe Matt has experienced in the past. When we introduce ourselves to clients, we introduce ourselves as part of our team and that they also may be working with any of the other agents on our team throughout the transaction.
Yep, gotcha. Matt, same questions there. Like, what does your team look like today? You could talk a little about, the domestic family team if you want a little bit that you had before, and then also like what does production look like and projections on that going forward.
Sure. So my background, we started, I think kind of what Annie was describing, maybe just a different label or title for it, but was a domestic team. So that was, someone who's in close relation to you. So my wife and I had a domestic team for the first probably 3 years. That team was more of a supportive team, right? Kind of like what Annie was describing with her daughter, helping me with certain tasks. I was helping her with certain tasks. Like we worked together on the same clients, right? Because we had a very, same sphere of influence, but it was more of a supportive role where we could help each other out. Honestly, she was an agent first, and she was pregnant with our second daughter, and I got licensed to be her support system and help her with the business. So that's how I got thrown into real estate in the first place. But then, we kind of decided at a certain point, as teams change and our markets change and how we were operating our business changed, she transitioned in more into mortgage. That was something we wanted to be able to offer more services, right? So we were still a team, but I was working in my lane as a realtor and she was working in her lane on the lending side. So we were still a team, but not under the traditional construct, so to speak. So I basically worked as a solo agent, and then you fast forward to now, after a brokerage change to Epic Realty, was approached about forming, I don't call it more of a traditional team with other agents, and kind of as JJ described earlier, it's more of like a supportive role where I'm the team lead. I'm more of a supportive role, and we support each other. So it's similar to the domestic team, only the construct is a little bit different. So that's kind of where my history and background with teams go. And like Andy said, there's a vetting process. Andy, can you talk, just out of curiosity, can you talk a little bit about because you've grown, right? Kind of similar to me. You went from basically a domestic team to something that's involved agents that are not in direct relation to you. What was your vetting process looking like when you were thinking of growing your team?
Yeah, so working with Keller Williams, which is such a wonderful company. I talked with a lot of agents that, like, I know Matt, you have about the company and the things that it offers and the things that it can offer for your business. And when I get approached by somebody that I know personally, and they always say, "I want to join your real estate team," and I'm like, okay, well, that's just a start of a conversation, right? Like, what does that mean to you? And what do you know about real estate teams? And, what supports are you looking for? Because a lot of times our brokerage themselves can provide those supports, and you don't even need to be part of a real estate team, And so just trying to make sure that we understand the person's goals in real estate for the next couple years, because as we all know, when you're out the gate, it's not always a rough or a smooth transition, and it can be kind of a rough road, but just kind of knowing what those people need and who can and should provide those supports. Certainly had plenty of agents approach me about being on the team that, I probably convinced otherwise, because I knew they were going to be successful on their own. And part of the team is you are a team, you're there to support each other, which is one of the big things I was missing when I started is real estate can be kind of lonely sometimes, it's like you're out there, blood, sweat, and tears, and do it. And so by bringing my daughter on, it created that feeling of actual internal support. And I think some people need that and some people don't. So to kind of vet them in that way, it all starts with the conversation. And then they go, excuse me, I go to my team and talk to them about the agent and how they will fit into the team and what supports that we're all going to need to provide to them, because it won't just be me providing those supports.
Yeah, I mean, it's very true that I think sometimes all teams get lumped into the same basket, right? And I think different teams can provide different type of benefits for agents individually. So if you're looking for a team that's going to help you get production and leads, some teams may provide that, some may not. If it's more you want to have access to the team leader to help you mentor and grow so you can eventually leave the team, some teams might be better for that than others, right? So understanding even on the other side, and that gets more into, why join a team, in a couple of weeks. But, I think that's really important for team leaders to understand, like, what are you providing to your agents? Because you may not be, and Annie, it sounds like you definitely vetted this through. every agent may not be great for your team, and you might not be a great leader for that agent as well, depending on what they're looking for, right? So one of the things that you mentioned in there that I wanted to ask about was, what challenges in that before you formed the team, what were some of the challenges that you face as a solo agent or limitations that you feel like, or you felt like, or you still feel like that the team is going to benefit you going forward?
You want me to start?
Yeah, you can start. Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, again, it was really a camaraderie feeling that was missing in my business. And I would be at the brokerage that I was previously at and see people having daily team meetings and discussing clients and how they were how each one on the team was going to assist that transaction. And to me, as a former elementary school principal, I'm used to leaning on a team, right? Like a principal can't do it all, even though we certainly probably try some days. But I just felt like that I was needing that in my life, and I actually considered joining a team before I formed my own. But that didn't work. As I stated earlier, the brokerage that I worked for wasn't going to allow us to form as a group since we were already individual agents, which is understandable. But so I felt like I was seeking some sort of team time or teammates, or also, I'm a natural born educator. I've been doing it for a long time, and I already felt like as Paige was going through the process that I was mentoring her and to grow her business. And I thought, what a perfect opportunity to start a team that's based off of mentorship, which is really kind of what we have going.
Yep. Matt, kind of same question for you, now, because you went a while in between, you and Kelsey having a team and then, forming a team this year. Like, what were some of the challenges, limitations you faced as a solo agent that having this team has solved for you?
Yeah, so when we had a domestic team, like I said, it was more of like a support structure, helping everybody out. And that's still what goes on currently at our team. But I think I didn't probably understand as a solo agent for 4 years, what I was starting to understand, and Andy did a great job of pointing it out. There's a mentorship piece involved, right? And a lot of brokerages, they tout mentorship programs and whatever. But to me, this was true mentorship. And I probably wasn't hearing it before. Like, I was like, no, that's cool. Like, no, I'm just going to do my own thing. Like, that's really great. You're looking for that, but that's not something I'm interested in providing. And I think what I realized at my last brokerage over the last 4 years is I was kind of in, kind of like a mentor teaching leadership role, whether I wanted it or not. Like, people were coming to me with questions and asking my opinion if they had issues or problems. And what I was learning was just because that wasn't something I needed on an everyday basis, what I was realizing, because this whole topic's about why you started a team, what I was realizing is just because that's not something that I need all the time, there are people that do need and want that. And, I kind of had the camaraderie built through our group at our previous brokerage, but this was a way to form not only a tighter knit camaraderie, kind of like Andy spoke about, but there's people who want that mentorship. They want that direct access to you. They want you to open up the playbook, so to speak. And where before I was kind of close guarded to some of those things, now I'm more open and willing to share. And, there's a benefit now to those agents, right, that have joined the team, in addition to just helping out with tasks. But then there's also benefit for me. And I do feel like, not just from a financial perspective, I do get something out of it in terms of camaraderie and leadership and those types of things. So that was what kind of opened my mind up to the whole idea, was once I started listening to people and what they're needing, because what everybody else needs or what I need out of this isn't the same as what everybody else needs or wants. And once I was kind of more open to that idea and it really clicked, that's why I was like, you know what, this is something I think I'm actually interested in putting together, and that's kind of where I started.
Yeah, and I think sometimes there's a misconception that people who need teams or want teams are only people who are new to the industry or they don't have enough business to get going, right? And so sometimes it's not always about that. Some people want, like you said, at any brokerage, in my experience of having run a brokerage and being in different brokerages, yes, there's some camaraderie within the brokerage. There can be more or less of that, but having a team that is close knit is just like you said, Matt, it's a tighter knit group that you have camaraderie with and supporting each other, right? And so, as humans, we like groups, we like companionship, we like having people around. And so sometimes, agents just want and need that additional camaraderie, additional connection with people and want to feel like they're part of something, right? So that's something I think sometimes gets overlooked. Real quick, I'm going to divert back. So we've had a couple people join the webinar. I just want to mention again, so we're in the webinar format. So you're anonymous on here. You can see us. Everybody else who's on here as an attendee, you're anonymous. If you want to ask any questions, on the bottom, there's a question Q&A. You can ask any question. You can click anonymous. No questions have been asked so far, so we've been crushing it. We're just making everybody's life so much easier. They understand everything. But if you have any questions, definitely put it in. If you click anonymous on the box when it pops up where you type in your question, your name won't come through if you want to stay anonymous. If you don't want to, that's completely fine. We just like to host this anonymously. That way people want to come on here and they want to ask questions that they normally wouldn't, I'm one of those people sometimes in a group, like I don't want to raise my hand and ask the question, but I have a question internal. So this is a way for, if you're like me, you can ask this question and nobody can know that you asked the question. And yes, there are no stupid questions. So fire away on the questions if you have some. So, both of you guys have formed teams. What do you feel like looking back at it now, because you both had teams for several months or years, over a year now, what do you feel like was some of the biggest challenges you faced when first forming your team? And then how did you overcome that?
Annie, you
I didn't say who to ask first. I'm sorry, Matt, you go.
I think the biggest challenge I faced was just not thinking that everybody thinks like me, right? Understanding what other people's needs and wants were out of the team and out of the agreement, out of that relationship. And so I think JJ said it earlier, like there's a misconception that a team is always this, right? And, that path or that type of team that everybody I think thinks of wasn't something I was interested in joining, and certainly wasn't something that I was interested in leading. But then, with my brokerage change, there was certain things that gave me more flexibility within a team construct that made it more appealing to me. And now feeling like I could provide what was wanted from me and do it in what I would consider a fair manner, a fair agreement with teammates. So that was one thing that I just had to realize. I would say one of the challenges was just being open to that, right? I think it's very easy to just get set in our way of thinking. And like I said, I was a solo agent basically for 4 years, and I'm just going to keep doing this. But I think once you kind of, peel the layers back and see what other people want, and then realize it can be beneficial to you too. Like, I provide certain things for my team, but like I also get things out of it from my team. Like I said, the camaraderie, the relationships, the support, there's something in it for me too, rather than just, a financial incentive. So to me, that's kind of the biggest things, is just being open-minded and then realizing that you do offer value as a team lead. So I think that's interesting for you, Annie. Like, when did you have that pivot to where, because I've been doing this 8 years. I know you've been in just a couple years. When did you kind of turn around and realize, as a solo agent / team lead, I do have something to offer. I do have a value proposition. Like, when did that click for you? Because it took me almost 8 years to figure out that I actually had something to offer. When did that click for you?
It was from day one for me. I've always wanted to be on the leadership side of most of what I've done in my past, and there weren't a lot of opportunities in my previous brokerage for leadership positions. They were kind of locked in already. There wasn't, they weren't creating new opportunities, and I thought, oh, I could go in on the teaching end of it. But, given that particular brokerage has so many brokers, they require those folks to be, the teachers of most of the classes, or agents that have been in the business a long time, or and I just felt like there has to be a way. Like I've taken a million leadership courses in the last 17 years, so there has to be a way. And some of the challenges that I faced when I started the 319 home team is I had no idea what the hell I was doing. Sorry, I shouldn't swear on here, but I had no idea what I was doing. I just knew that my daughter was joining the brokerage and we were going to be a team. I had no idea. I had people, one person telling me I should form an S Corp, another one telling me an LLC. I didn't even know what any of that meant. So those were some of the challenges. And part of it really is, and I think Matt alluded to it earlier, all teams are different. You're not going to run into two identical teams that provide their agents the same thing and get the same thing in return. I know when I started exploring, joining a team, I thought, well, I'm not going to give you half my salary. I'm not going to give you 50% of my commission and work just as hard as I am now. So I don't even know why anybody would want to do that, And so everything is different, and you have to, through trial and error, essentially, unfortunately, learn what's going to work for you, what's going to work for your teammates. And that has been a process that really has taken a positive uptick since I switched brokerages. And there's just been a lot more available education about teams, about running teams, why you would add a person to your team, what that person's role might be. Just a lot of learning happens at Keller Williams, which is another plug for the company. One of my favorite things about it is it's really a place of education, and deeply rooted in making sure that their agents are doing the right thing by the business.
Yeah. And kind of your part of both of you guys' answers is going to segue into the first question that we have here. But I know Matt didn't really want to get into the details, but I'll mention it. So like at our previous brokerage, Matt and I were both at eXp Realty. We're both currently at Epic Realty. Previously, if you've had a traditional or standard team, as a team leader, Matt would have had to take a minimum of at least 25% of the split. He could take more, could take 50, could take whatever, but he had to take at least 25. And then there's I can speak on Matt's behalf a little bit. I don't think he's going to get upset if I say these things, but there's a little bit of a trade-off of like, what's the value proposition? Like if I'm taking 50% of somebody's split, I feel like I need to get 50% value, right? If I take 25% split, there's 20%, 25% value. And I feel like, knowing Matt for years now, that it's like, well, what am I giving value to warrant you to give me 25% of that commission, right? When we moved to Epic, now the team structure is more open, where you can charge whatever you want, but the minimum is 5. So now I think for Matt, it's more easy to say, well, I can find 5 or 10 or 15 or whatever the number is percent value. That's a little bit easier for me to see that I have a fair exchange of value, right? So that goes into the anonymous question here, which was, camaraderie is awesome, but how is the money split on deals typically? And this isn't a cop-out, and I'll let the other two answer as well, but there's no typical answer there. There's no typical split, right? You can have, I would say, my guess is most teams is it's probably going to be between 25 and 50%, depending where the lead came from. Now you still have your cap, typically your split with the brokerage that shouldn't say cap. You still have typically your split with the brokerage, but then you have your team split as well, depending on how it's all set up. But I don't think there's a typical answer. I think for agents that are looking at teams, it's what's the value you're getting out of that? If you're providing leads for somebody, there's value in that. If you're providing just team, mentorship and helping, there's value in that. How much somebody values that could be differently depending where they're at in their business, right? And what they want. So, I don't know if you guys have an answer. Matt, I'll let you go first on this one. How's the money split on deals typically? That's kind of my feeling is there is no typical, it just kind of depends on the value you're getting from the team lead.
Yeah, I would agree. There is no typical, and I think that's where I struggled before changing brokerages. Was I thought, and maybe Amy's experience was like this at her previous brokerage. I thought there was just a one structure. You form a team. This is what the expectation is of the team leader, and there's a certain split to the team lead that's associated with that. And I don't know what it was at IA Homes back in the day. Never, never discussed having a team at IA Homes, but at Epic or at EXP, there was a minimum. It was a 25% minimum. And, part of the reason that kept me a solo agent, even though within our group, I felt like I was providing leadership and mentorship, what kept me as a solo agent is I didn't want the pressure of feeling like I had to provide as a team lead to my team members 25% of value day in and day out. Right? I didn't want to have to feel like I was falling short of expectations or I wasn't holding up my end of the bargain, right? And so I was happy just being solo, right? But now with the flexibility I have now I do feel like, and this is something where again I mentioned I had to really listen to people. I do add value. There is value to what I have to offer as a team lead, but then what is that value worth to someone else? And didn't have that flexibility to figure that out before, do have that flexibility now. And so I wouldn't say that there's any typical split. I don't know how many people on this call have ever brokerage shopped, right? I love brokerage shopping. I mean, my wife likes to go shopping for clothes. I like to brokerage shop. Like,
That is very true. You do like to broker shop.
that's a good time to me. Like, I have a great time doing that, right? And so I think brokerage shopping is one thing, but I think there's very similar processes in team shopping. If you're interested in a team, you should be doing the same thing when you vet a brokerage and pick a brokerage to align yourself with. I think you should do the same thing if you want to align yourself with a team. So when you say, is there a typical split? No, there's not. And what I would encourage anybody on this call to do, if you're interested in joining a team, this is a topic, for a couple of weeks from now, but you should be team shopping just as well as you should be brokerage shopping.
I would 100% agree with that. No two transactions are the same. I think anybody who's in real estate is going to realize that. And when a lead comes into our team, we go on a rotation basis. So, we kind of go like I'll give an example of, we had a lead come in my agent, Travis Burke. He is really more leaning towards some commercial work. Me, not interested in that. I'd rather show you the next beautiful house. So the lead goes to him. So we just kind of have an understanding on our team about how everything's going to work. And the way that we have formed our team is it's a pay per transaction into the team until you cap at your company dollar, and then the remainder of what you would and this probably doesn't make sense to a lot of people, but whatever. So anybody who I add to my team has a lower company dollar than they would if they were a solo agent. So whatever amount that cap is up into what they would have paid if they were a solo agent goes to the team. So it just reinvests to the team. And what we've done is we've sort of created or attempted to create, or still working on creating sort of a mini, I don't know, like a mini brokerage within the brokerage, right? Like we have set up for profit share. All that money that gets put into the team, if there's some at the end of the year, we split it out by your sales, kind of some of those things that that we have thought of and put and tried to implement moving forward. We just recently had Travis join our team. So we're just trying to get that into place for the next fiscal year.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. And that's, going back to the question, and I appreciate whoever answered that. If you have other questions, definitely put them in there. And I wasn't trying to not answer that question because we definitely want to give open, honest answers to these questions. But what Matt said and Annie alluded to, I think is key. That I think one thing you want to do is think about what do you want in a team, right? What is it that you're looking for in a team, and then interview people to find that. Because by default, probably 6 months or a year ago, if someone wants to join a team, my first thought is, well, they want leads. But not everybody wants that. That isn't what everybody wants out of a team. So you have to think about what is your priority. And then find the place that's going to help you with that the most, and who's going to take you. To me, it's who's going to take you where you want to go in your business. Now, do the splits matter? Yes. But if someone gives you 100% and you have 0 transactions, 100% of 0 is still $0, right? So is someone going to help you grow your business? And then how much is that worth that to you? And so I think you have to shop around on teams, and you should interview multiple people and try to find out, again, before you interview somebody, what is important to you? Is it the mentorship? Is it the education? Is it, more money in your pocket? Is it getting more leads? You feel like you can close more deals? Like what is it that you want in your business is ultimately what I would think about. Next question. So for both of you, we'll start with Annie on this one first. For agents who are thinking about forming a team, what are the practical first steps and the steps that they should do to get started on that? What should they be thinking about ahead of time? Because you guys have both gone through it, and there's there's probably some things you're like, I wish I learned, I wish I knew that before I started. What are some of those things that you would share, Annie?
Yeah. So I would know your why. You got to know your why, like what we've been talking about, because what value are you going to provide to your teammates? And my biggest recommendation would be to talk with a broker within your brokerage about how that works within your brokerage, and what are the because all brokerages have different rules about that, and different ideas of how or when a team should be formed, and there Keller Williams has been phenomenal in coaching me about why do you want a team? Why do you think you need one? Why would you add another agent? And those kind of things. And so I would definitely recommend that you ask the brokerage that you're at. And then if you're not getting the answers that you want, I would go Matt's route and do some brokerage shopping, because there's a home for everybody out there. So, just make sure that your goals for creating a team align with your brokerages, because, that will save a lot of heartache in the end.
Matt, what's your thoughts on that one?
So Annie hit a lot of good topics there, but one I think is you need to fully understand, like why should I start a team? First, realize what value you add, and then really decide what is your value proposition. Like JJ said earlier, like, are you giving mentorship? Are you giving teams? Or not teams, leads? Are you just a support role? Like, really dive in on what your value proposition is. Because when I was approached about forming a team, it wasn't my idea. my own team wasn't even my idea. It was someone else's idea that said, had you thought about forming a team? And I was like, no, why would I ever do that? And then when I discovered what she was looking for, and then I was really dug a deep dive into what I add in terms of value, I was like, well, this actually could make a lot of sense. So if you're going to start a team, I think really knowing your value proposition, really understanding the compensation or the fees that are associated with that value proposition. I think Andy said it great. Know your why. Like, I literally have it into my team agreement. Like, my agreement, there's a section in my team agreement that literally talks about my goal for you is not to have you on my team for life. If you want to stick around and, we have that camaraderie, if you want to, be on the team for 2, 3, 5, 10 years, like, I'm all for that. But my goal is to give you the tools and the processes and the knowledge where you can be a successful solo agent if that's what you want to do. so that's kind of where my value proposition goes, and where, the know your why, which I really like what you said there, Amy. And then having that all in a team agreement, like really laying things out in black and white and making them abundantly clear, what the expectations are, not only of myself as a team lead, but what the expectations are from the team members. Like, I don't think that I should be the only one adding value. Like, if we're going to add people to the team, or the people we add, like, there's the old saying, the rising tides raise all ships, right? Like, I feel like we should all add some type of value. Even though I'm the team lead on paper, I feel like there's a value that we should all bring to that table and work together. And then lastly, again, what Annie said is, what does your team structure look like within your brokerage? Because you're kind of creating like a mini brokerage within your brokerage, right? And so, how does that construct fit? What's the benefits of joining a team, not just joining the Clark Real Estate team, but what does it look like joining a team at Epic Realty? What are those benefits that are intrinsic to just joining my team that you get from the brokerage? So I think those are all things you really have to kind of boil down and dig into, before you really make that plunge.
Yeah, I think it's really important that agents, they're going to form a team. One of the things is they have to understand, what does that team structure look like within their brokerage? Are there limitations? What's the positives and negatives for an agent who joins their team within the brokerage, right? Because you can't, I think everybody knows this, but you can't join a team that you're not a member of that brokerage. I'm not Keller Williams, so I can't join the 319 home team. Like, I think everybody knows that on this call, but just to make sure everybody's clear on that, right? You have to be in the same brokerage. So what is the benefits, that agents get by joining your team within the brokerage as well? I think the mindset sometimes for agents when they think about teams, and this is the part I want to, discourage people from doing if they're watching this video when we record this, or if you're watching this live, is if your goal is to form a team so you can make more money off of other people's back and that's your sole purpose, don't form a team. Like, that is not the route to go, right? So I think I'm not saying everybody, I don't know that everybody has done that, but I just feel like sometimes that's kind of the nature of why some people are attracted to teams right away, is, they're making all this extra money and they're not having to do as much work. There's a lot of work. Matt and Annie can both talk about this. I can talk about this from I have non-agent team as far as support staff, but it's not necessarily always easier, right? It's sometimes even harder with a team because you're mentoring people, you're helping them through stuff. But you're going into it to build something, to rise all ships, like Matt said. So I think people need to think about that. And the why part is really important as well, because if you're not clear on what your value is to somebody, then you're not going to have a lot of people want to come to you. So if your value proposition or your why is all over the place because you're trying to hit every agent, like, I want to make a team that's attractive to everybody in the industry, then I think you're also kind of losing the point of creating an effective team. Just like, if you've watched anything on marketing, it's like, well, if you say your ideal client is anybody who breathes because they might buy or sell in the next year, well, then you don't have any target market. Like, you're not drilling down on who your client is. So your ideal client is. So it's kind of the same thing. Like, who's your ideal agent that you want to help grow? And if you can't pinpoint that, it goes back to the why that Annie said. And I think that you might want to reevaluate that before you start a team. So, reminder on questions. If we have more questions, again, we're just crushing it because we just had the one question. So ask any more questions that you guys have as we get down to we got 10 minutes or so left. So I had to skip through some of my questions I had. We're going over these so well. I think that one we already touched on. Matt, do you have a question? Or Andy, do you have a question you want to throw out there? I'm looking through my list of questions because we've hit a lot of these and we're talking about it.
I say I had a list, but we've kind of hit on a lot of them.
Yeah.
I got a question for Annie. I love putting Annie on the spot. This is fun. This is not a question I sent you ahead of time, so this is total ad lib here. But how did you form your team agreement? Like, did you write it from scratch? Did you have ChatGPT write your team agreement? Like, where did the basis and the root of your team
do that? No, just kidding. Yeah, so I went to my broker, Michelle Bennett, and asked her what the brokerage's policies are on the team, and then started drafting some things with my current teammate, which is my daughter, about what do we want this to look like, right? Like, she's not a founder of the team, and she is under me, but it's kind of, I'm trying to build a legacy for her, right? Like, she's 22 years old. So I'm not going to be in this for the next 40 years. Hopefully we'll be on a beach somewhere else. And so kind of what things does she envision? I'm talking to 22-year-olds is so fascinating because they have a totally different view of the world, right? So yeah, we did kind of take the structure that was given to us by our brokerage to form our team agreement. Now, when I was at my previous brokerage, we didn't have a team agreement because we were like a married couple there. It was like who was getting the check? I got the check. I paid Paige out of my commission, and she was an employee of me. So that changed quite a bit when I moved over to Keller Williams, because I didn't want to employ my daughter. I wanted her to be employed. So I kind of moved some things around based off of our experience there. So that's how we formed our agreement, and we come to the table monthly and review that agreement and discuss, are there some things we should tweak, or are all of these policies and procedures in place, almost like a school board would do with their policies and procedures, because no two transactions are the same. Nothing is the same day to day, and we want to continue to grow and evolve.
I think that's
So Matt, go ahead.
just to follow up on that. Like, I think that's a good point. Like, you were willing to evolve and adjust.
Yeah.
I've just had a team since roughly April or so, and what I'm willing to offer and what fits really good for one of my teammates maybe doesn't totally fit. Maybe it fits 95% of what the other person is needing and wanting. And so, within my team, we've already made some adjustments, kind of like you said, where you come to the table once a month and look, evaluate things and see if changes are made. Like, we don't have a set time once a month, but like if there is something that could be beneficial that could be provided, we bring that to the table. Let's discuss that and let's see how we can make that fit into our current agreement. And what me and one of my teams, we've already made an adjustment on something because we found a pain point with her that I could solve. And so let's put that in writing, and let's hold me accountable to your expectations. So I think that's important to be willing to diverge a little bit from what you originally agreed and fill in some gaps if need be.
We always go with the rule of 300. I don't know if you guys have heard this before, but we're not making any changes or adjustments to unless there's an IQ of at least combined IQ of 300 in the room. So I always consult with, my broker or somebody else at Keller Williams that has a team. If I'm thinking like, this doesn't really make sense anymore. It made sense when I wrote it, a year ago, but it doesn't make sense anymore. So we always bring at least a few different views of how that might work out before we sit down and discuss those policies.
Sadly, if me and Matt are in the room, we need another 150 IQ to be in the room with us.
Yeah, we're gonna have to rope some other people in.
We have like 6 or 7 people for us to get to that 300 IQ.
We're getting together.
I do like that idea, though. It's just not like one person or 2 people, making a decision, right? It's trying to get the collective. So Matt, I know a little bit about it, but like, how did you? It's kind of the same question to you that you asked Annie. Like, how did you come up with your team agreement?
Yeah, I mean, like Annie, I needed a starting point, right? So I went to my broker first and foremost. She has her own team. So I definitely wanted her input, and her team is drastically different than how mine is set up. But I think the premise, not only from a Epic Realty perspective, but just an overall premise of the team agreement was something that I was interested in. So once I kind of discovered what hers looked like. And I did research online too of what other structures might look like. So I was kind of like almost like a gatherer, right? Like I wanted to take this person's really good idea. I wanted to take this person's good idea. I wanted to take what I knew was things that, that my teammates were wanting or needing out of the team agreement. So I was kind of doing taking a little bit of piece from everywhere. Maybe I should see Annie's and I can take a little piece of hers too, potentially. I don't know. But like that's kind of what my style was. I wanted to take a little bit of everything that I thought was good about other people's agreements or things that jived with what I wanted out of it and what my teammates wanted. Those are all things that I implemented and then kind of put my own spin on it a little bit too. So didn't use ChatGPT though, but now that I'm thinking about it, that could have been a good references or resource as well.
That's ChatGPT is like, yeah, my go-to. I use it every day on stuff. Because it's a lot smarter than me. That's how I get to the 300 IQ. Like ChatGPT has 290, I give 10. So, in the essence of time, we're already at 11:25. Again, if you have a question, definitely throw it in there for the next 4 minutes, 11:26. Last question that I'm going to ask, and this is going to be kind of a key takeaway for people. If there's one piece of advice you could give an agent thinking about forming of a team, what would it be? And we'll go Matt first.
Yeah, I would say the best piece of advice I can give is what do you want to get out of it? Right? Like really think about because that's where I was struggling is like, well, I can provide these things, but what am I getting out of this? And what I actually found out is and I'm not even talking financially, I'm just talking about the extrinsic things, like what was I getting out of it? Because it is extra work. There's people who lean on you for support, for guidance, for teachings, for training, for leadership. So if you're providing all these things, what are you getting out of it? And what I found is actually some of those things I was providing, I'm actually getting in return as well. And that's where I talk about the, rising tides raise all ships. So I would really think about what you're getting out of it and then also how you're returning that back. Because I think that's something that is missing, or maybe it's not known in a lot of teams, is you feel like it's all about what's the team lead offering out. But also think about as you as a team, like what are the benefits to you as a team lead apart from whatever financial piece you have set up within your construct. Because I think what you'll find is when you talk about these things like camaraderie and the leadership and the teamwork, I think you'll find you'll get more of those things than you probably initially thought you would get out of it. And so really weigh that in is if I'm looking for those things and I do have things to also offer, maybe you might make a good team lead.
Yep. Annie, what's your one piece of advice you give an agent who's thinking about forming a team?
Probably going, I will just reiterate that know your why, know what you're expecting from a team and what you're giving back, just like Matt said, but then also know that all teams are different. So just because you hear one thing from one team, you may even within a brokerage hear something completely different about a team agreement from another team. So do your research would be my number one suggestion, and don't make a decision quickly because it's going to change your course, and you just have to know your why and do your research.
Yes, very true. And I think that's great advice for both you guys on like understand why you're wanting to form a team. And as you said, just because nobody in your brokerage or no team you're familiar with is doing a team like you want it set up doesn't mean that it can't be, right? Find some people that help you or find a brokerage that helps you, get that team structure that you're looking for so that way you can provide that. But again, I go back to what I said before to kind of answer the question. If the reason you're doing it is so you can make more money and do less work, and that's like the only reason it's not thinking about uplifting people, then I'd say I wouldn't form a team. My personal opinion on that. But, thanks, Annie, so much for joining us on this call. I don't see any other questions. So if you have any, put them in there real quick. But, appreciate everybody who came on as well. And again, Annie, for jumping on the call with Matt and I and talking about this because it's sometimes people don't want to open up and share information and share trade secrets about how things are done just a little tip, there are no secrets in this industry. We can all figure out things by doing a little bit of research, but I really appreciate you coming on and sharing with us today.
Yeah, no, thank you guys so much for reaching out. You guys don't give yourself enough credit for education in the real estate world. I look up to both of you and follow your stuff. So, I haven't had a chance to do a deal with you yet, JJ, but, Matt has certainly left an impression on me. And I know folks that have joined the brokerage at Keller Williams from EXP that used to work with you really talk about you highly. So I appreciate all that you do for the industry.
Absolutely. We're glad to contribute. And I got 5 active listings. Just go write an offer on any of them, and then we'll have our first deal together. But, what's that?
I said, maybe I need to get one's just down the street from my new house over on J, northeast, that condo. Don't you have that condo over there?
They've taken it off the market for the spring. So that's hard feelings. Come on now. No, that's okay.
Okay. Sorry to stir the pot this early in the day.
Yeah. No, there was a comment came in. Oh, saying thanks for everything. But one of the things I want to mention for the people who are on or watching the recording, don't forget this is our first in a 3-part series about teams. So next week, Alexis Kemp is going to be talking about why she left a team, which she also then ultimately formed a team. So she'll be able to talk about all 3 of these topics, but we're going to kind of focus on leaving a team. And after that, Tara and Liz are going to talk about why they joined a team. And so definitely, it's going to be on the same link that you registered for this. Go in there and register for those. We appreciate anybody who watched this, and ask questions. We really like the interaction, and we'll continue to try to provide value through these again. So thank you very much for everyone to join, and we'll talk to you guys soon. And everybody have a happy Thanksgiving.